One of the richest and whitest communities in Atlanta is moving to secede from the city, and wait till you get a load of this. They want to incorporate as their own community. In the defense of this, coming from Republicans, and not just average Republicans there in Georgia, some of the most extreme Republicans in the state, is that this is due to the city's crime rate. They want to have more control over their own police. So a Republican-led committee in the Georgia State Senate has already voted 4-3 on this along party lines to support a measure to decide whether the community of Buckhead, which represents about 45% of Atlanta's property value, just to give you an idea of this community versus the rest of Atlanta, can secede from the city. Now, important to note that local political analysts there say this is unlikely to actually pass. That might seem to make it better. I think in some ways it makes it worse. To engage in something like this, which I think the racial and political underpinnings of it are so clear, to do it when it is purely symbolic seems even worse to me. But anyway, for the supporters of this measure, they say that Buckhead becoming independent would mean a police force that they can control, more say over the community's development, and the ability to have greater sway over its destiny. Because a community like this of largely white people can't talk about politics without eventually invoking destiny. Anyway, for others, Buckhead's prospective secession is one steeped in the city's racial history and could become a hot button issue in Georgia's US Senate primaries in 2024. This is not the first community, by the way, in the area that has already pursued secession. And by the way, it has some support federally too. Marjorie Greene tweeted that this is good. A vote against Buckhead City is a vote for crime. A vote for Buckhead City is a vote for freedom. And she look, I have to list her reasoning behind this though, because it ties into a larger point that she's been making in politics. She says, can they stand against the Democrats who want to keep all the taxes taken for Buckhead in the city of Atlanta? Or will they vote to free Buckhead and their hard-earned tax dollars to be able to run their city safer and better than the city of Atlanta? So if there's a part of the city that you have any kind of problem with, you can just immediately cut it off, which might seem reasonable to some of those people now. But I have a feeling there's probably some area of Buckhead that's not as hoity-toity as the others at some point. Maybe they need to be cast off. Maybe we just keep cutting ourselves into smaller and smaller me segments. Maybe that's a good way to run a modern democracy. Sabrina, what do you think?
Yeah, just at this point, just let them and then let them find out how expensive it's going to be to not only like run but maintain their own little area. Never mind like the fact that they're going to be like cutting out the people who would normally work for them in those areas, like they're gonna see kind of quickly that it's not gonna work out if it's just the rich, because they're not gonna have anybody to exploit anymore if it's just them in that little area.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I guess in some ways she's at least being like a little bit consistent in that she now thinks the solution to literally everything is cutting into smaller pieces or whatever. But again, like we've been trying to educate her that in the same way that she's aggrieved by the idea that Buckhead, which raises a lot of money or whatever, would have to give it to undeserving people. Like that is how America works. The states that make a lot more money, generate a lot of tax revenue, subsidize the states that can't. And she's willing, in a very self-destructive fashion, to end that with her national divorce. So I guess kudos to her. But that is how our society actually works. Because not every contribution is purely based on tax revenue. There are other contributions that states, that counties, that towns, that individuals can make outside of just how they increase the gross GDP. That is, again, it is this focus on wealth rather than the focus on our commonwealth, which is not purely fiscal, but that is an amalgamation of everything that makes us the powerful, dynamic society that we are. And these people that wanna like pick little holes in it and cut off little segments and everything, a society cannot stand if those sorts of people take power. So I hate to see this, particularly in this case where it is so clearly being influenced by racial politics in Georgia. Anyway, I just hate the whole thing, and her being involved makes it even worse. Sabrina, any other thoughts?
No, yeah, that's the worst part of it, that it is so racially motivated. So fortunately, I doubt this will pass. But yeah, they'll probably try it again in a few years, and they'll just have to keep repeating.
Yeah. By the way, James Cruz of the Fuzzy Dragon points out that this sounds like what Piedmont did to Oakland in 1907, still one of the most wealthy white parts of the East Bay, surrounded by Oakland. I don't know the history of that, but I wouldn't be surprised. As I alluded to, this sort of thing isn't even new necessarily to Georgia. Again, we're trying to have a society here. That's what we're trying to have. Some of us.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.